Here we go. We should be moving.
Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
How do we know? All right, there we go. Good evening, Laura and Beth. Say hi to Ember over there on the ottoman. Miles looking around here someplace. Hey, Kathleen, and Gladys, and Heather.
Benny Goodman, ladies and gentlemen, the man with the torrid clarinet and the even more torrid band who purveys assorted rhythms, all danceable, in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago. And first of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies.
Miles is like, hey, there's the other cat here now. Hotel rooms by tomorrow, everybody. Con is in 3 weeks. Hey, Luann. Hey, Octavio. Hey, Tracy. WTTW is showing me, eh? Is it on right now? Hey, Mona, Megan. Hey, Lori and the Smokies. Glad to have you, Bridget and Mary Jo. Hey, Georgia. Hey, Bob. Holla. Come on, Miles. There we go. I take on The Conjuring. Haven't seen it. Hey, Katie. Hey, Diane. And Johann. Marie. Hey, everybody. Big old snaggletooth boy. Hey, Christine and Katie. Hey, Bridget, Deanne. Hey, Dad. Hey, Geraldine. Well, Miles is like, you're not getting away with me that easy, kid. Miles, I know you can make that jump. Hey, Bob. Hey, Laura, I'm glad you liked the podcast. Particularly proud of the next couple of episodes, plus the stuff on the Patreon for it is going to be big. Meg, you know what adulthood is by next week everything should calm down. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Miles.
Benny Goodman presents Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
Hey, Lorena. comes Helen Ward singing. Miles, quit it. Glad you like it. We're out to a good stop. Good start. I finished all the Patreon posts for episode 3 today. So we're a couple of weeks ahead on it. Amber, are you up here too now? Gonna have both cats up here? Here, Miles, here. Amber, will you look at this? I am veritably drowning in cats. Amber, you're in the way. Laura, this one is a whole new Patreon for Doom's Snoopers. It's a whole different thing. Greetings, Donna. It'll just be one post. It'll just be not as many posts per week, but just all one price. Hey, Mom. Okay, Amber, we don't get on the keyboard, okay? I know that's something Miles never quite learned. Oh yeah, she learns all of Miles' worst habits. Today I had to redo the window screen after I caught her Spider-Manning up it. I tell the stars above you. Hey, Grandma Belle. Hey, everybody. Dad watching over on the YouTube. Hey, Miles. Miles, you gonna just, you gonna walk behind the computer? Is that what you're gonna do? You can do that.
Benny Goodman goes
Hey,
way
John.
back and gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny Walk. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Still letting Benny Goodman play a little bit here. We're still in the pre-show. No, I do not need more kittens. The Empress over here is like having a toddler in the house, as it is. Evening, Dan. Hey, everybody. Hey, Mary. Welcome along, everybody. I got 2 cats up on the shelves with me right now. And we just did a diving leap off of the shelf. Okay, so yes, this is going to be totally tubular. I think the brief period when the phrase dudical, like portmanteau of radical and dude, became popular, we realized we'd taken this California surfer dialect thing too far. We all had to kind of take a step back and say, when does it all end? Timothy, let's all go help Timothy with the laundry. We'll just caravan out there. Get some folding done. Is that right, Miles? Is that what you want to do? We're gonna do a little folding. I'm just gonna crash here or what?
And they all loved it. They all loved those bastards when they played by Benny Goodman. Now another one just in the same.
All right, one more tune from Benny Goodman, then we'll get started properly here. It's all the same to Miles, who is sitting back here behind me. Womp, 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 womp. Ember. Just see. Hey, Jen. Hey, Rihanna. Over on Twitch. I'm fine. No, dude, cool is sort of one thing. For a while we were saying that we were describing things as dudical, which was like radical but with a dude attached. It was too far, man. Too far. All right, we're almost through the pre-show music. Over walking across the sideboard, staring up at the picture of the chicken man. Had to get rid of the spider plant. It wasn't safe around her. Was Hoch ever under doctor care? Not that I know of. She is up on the shelves. Is she gonna go for the just kind of watch this in the background here. This is about to end up anyway, so let's just take a peek. Back there by the neon sign. Okay. She's looking for a way up. She's gotten further up before. Well, that's Benny wrapping it up.
Music by Benny Goodman is being presented from the Joseph.
Can one get into a pistol duel for calling someone a rascal? Nowadays, not as so much nowadays.
Arrangement of the bugle call rang.
It used to be a very common. It wasn't just rascal; it had to be a damned rascal. Well, that led to a lot of duels. That might come up on season 2 of Snoopers. But all right, everybody, welcome along. That is Benny Goodman wrapping it up for the time. Just kind of keeping an eye on the situation back behind me with little baby Ember hopping around. Okay, is she getting back to her favorite perch? Yeah. All right. She's back on the ottoman. You can see her right there. And Miles is still hanging out up here with me, chasing the power cable. Well, all right. Okay, everybody, welcome along. I'm Adam Seltzer from Mysterious Chicago Tours, having a heck of a hair day, if I do say so myself. All right, author of such books as Mysterious Chicago, the book, Just Kill Me, H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil, Murder Maps USA from Thames and Hudson, and Graceland Cemetery, Chicago Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. So those are just some of the older books. There is, in fact, a brand new book out right now, and that would be Johann Hoch, Chicago's Serial Husband, The Marriages and Murders of Johann Hoch. It's been a long time coming. It's been one of my favorite things to research for years. I'm almost loath to let it go, which is part of why I've started the Tomb Snoopers podcast with Patty Vasquez, so we can tell the Johann Hoch story in even more depth than I get into in the book with supplemental materials on the Patreon. This is one of my favorite things to research. I'm going to quick paste the Amazon link. I know that I should post an IndieBound link, whatever, but I make more money off of the Amazon links than I make from actual book sales. So I'm going to post that over in the comments there if you haven't got it yet. Also, I will have copies with me at Mystericon. I will have copies with me at tours, as long as the cases that I bought last. I may regret that. Yeah, so Tomb Snoopers, the podcast, is out right now. The first episode dropped on Monday night. The second one will be next Monday, and the next Monday after that, you see how this works. And over on patreon.com/tombsnoopers, there'll be huge amounts of supplemental material for all of these episodes, especially once the story really gets going. Lots of great stuff over there. I'm hoping to build this to a whole new audience outside of our little community here. I love our community here, but one must grow. Today we are going to be talking all about Johann Hoch. This particular month, the book is out. Officially, it's out September 23rd, but if I ask the publisher, they say, oh, it's out now. It's out whenever it gets in from the printers, if it's not a lead title. So, all right, everybody, we're going to talk about this guy, Johann Hoch, pictured here on the cover. To start with, we're going to imagine February 1905. A train rolled from New York all the way to Chicago, carrying on board a passenger who was the most famous criminal of the year so far. Johann Hoch, pictured here over on the bottom left. This dude, what looks like the guy on the Pringles can. Now, he agreed to pose for this picture because he said, I haven't really done all of these crimes. They're mistaking me for someone else. Pose me with all of these other guys so people can see how easy it is to mistake someone for me. So they posed him with 4 guys who looked nothing like him. And he thought that he had proven his point. By the time they had caught up with this guy back in New York, he had already proposed to what police believe would have been wife number 55. I'd say 25 is probably a little bit closer, but we don't really know for sure. But just going back, just a couple of months before, he had shown up here on Willow Street in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. Here on Willow Street was a candy store operated by a woman by the name of Marie Walker. Now, Hoch walked into this place having read a personal ad, a matrimonial ad. He had placed an ad himself. Marie, who owned the candy store, had replied to it. He walked in. They spoke for about half an hour. He said, I like you. You like me. We can get married then, yeah? And she said, yes, if what you say is true, I guess it's all right. So he took her down to 6340 South Union, where he lived, right across from the current location of the Disco Salad Bar. We'll just move over here briefly. There's nothing at all on the block anymore. House was torn down many years ago. But it looked about like this. It was just a nice little cottage where he brought his new bride, Marie. They married a couple of days after speaking for about half an hour or so. She called him my sweetheart very quickly on. So, she is now interred, though, over at Oakwood Cemetery because 5 weeks after the wedding, she died of apparent kidney disease. While her body was still on the bed, Hoch proposed to her sister, Emily, said the dead belonged to the dead, to the living belonged the living. Or anyway, that's what she testified at the trial. Later, she would take it all back. But Hoch married her the day after Marie was buried here at Oakwood Cemetery, then went to her bank and had her withdraw all of her money so he could put it in his account. But instead of that, he just took off for New York. The press got word of this story almost immediately. Marie was exhumed from here at Oakwood Cemetery, and a massive manhunt began to try to find Johann Hoch, the runaway groom. And so, we had to go a little bit into what was going on in Chicago at the time in 1905 when Johann Hoch became a media sensation. This is the tomb at Mount Olivet Cemetery of Francis O'Neill, Chief O'Neill, the chief of police, who is better remembered for his efforts to preserve Irish folk songs. Wasn't really considered a particularly corrupt official, though sometimes considered an inept one. Meanwhile, Inspector Shippey of the Chicago Police was considered a more of a corrupt official at the time. But we also got to look at what the newspapers were like at the time. This is what the Chicago Tribune looked like back in 1895. This was pretty typical. This is during the H.H. Holmes crisis, as you might call it, the investigation into the Holmes murder castle. At the time, you get, 7 columns across on the front page of a newspaper, a couple of big headlines, but nothing that dominates the entire page. But now, at the time of Johann Hoch, we're 10 years after this. Newspapers look like this now. Murdered in swift auto hired at the auditorium. Deep mystery. Meanwhile, another story, terror silences black hand victim. Chicago Evening American was run by William Randolph Hearst. This was the night edition. It is a much better paper than it is given credit for now. They would publish any rumor they could dream up. They would focus on sensationalistic stories, but they reported in more depth and just as reliably as anything else that was going around. But they were also using photographs. One thing you don't see in 1895 papers at all is photographs. By 1904, 1905, this one was in 1904, they were acting like a kid with a new toy. There had recently been a murder, the Dove murder. Mr. Dove rented an automobile at the old auditorium building in Dan Canary's garage. The next morning, they found it out in Lamont with the driver, young Charlie Bates, slumped over with a bullet in his brain. They never found Mr. Dove. You have to really read between the lines of this paper to see that this is a recreation, not an actual view of it being shot. They were also around the same time they ran Marshall Field in Death Race to Save Son Shot in Mystery. Now, Marshall Field said that there was no mystery here and threatened to pull his advertising from any paper who said otherwise, but the American already didn't get his advertising. Now, up here in Chicago is the Brewster Apartments up on the north side. This was the home of Evelyn Campbell, who was a columnist for the Chicago American, and ended up becoming a really big player in the Hoch story. She started interviewing Hoch's various ex-wives, going over letters, interviewing the police, really turning detective herself. So eventually they were saying, "Are you following Miss Campbell's Hoch clues? The detectives are." Which sounds like a brag from a newspaper, but was probably actually true. A lot of people were probably more comfortable going to Evelyn. A lot of these women that Hoch had married and deserted were probably more comfortable going to a woman reporter like Evelyn Campbell than going to the police. Also, the American was known to pay for scoops, and the police never did that sort of thing unless they were actively offering a reward. Now, Heather, the Field mystery is when Marshall Field Jr. was found shot in his mansion on South Prairie Avenue. It was officially an accidental shooting, but some believed it was a suicide or that he was shot at a nearby brothel. I've actually had some people who live in that building today on my Graceland tour this past weekend. All right, we're going to go back to the beginning of Hoch's career that people like Evelyn helped to uncover. This is approximately where Hoch set up a saloon in Wheeling, West Virginia in 1895. He showed up kind of out of nowhere. He sailed over from Germany. There's a list of departures that says Jacob Schmidt of Horweiler is departing from Bremen. That was his real name. But there was also a Jacob Huff departing at the same time. When Hoch arrived here, he started to call himself Jacob Huff. Now, he met a widow named Carolyn Wheeler. Carolyn in Wheeling, Carolyn Hoch. Her husband Adolf Hoch had died a few years before, apparently from drinking ice water. Probably some kind of a heart condition. But missing an awful lot of files in this one, I realize now. But shortly thereafter, Jacob Huff and Carolyn were wed. A lot of people thought, well, it's weird. That guy's a really handsome guy. Why is he dating her? She's blind in one eye. She's not even attractive. But they knew the real reason was that Carolyn had money. That's what Hoch was really after, and everybody knew it. So he set up a saloon over here, had a wedding. There's a couple of versions of their wedding photo extant. These are about as close as it gets. You can see their actual heads might be added in that one on the left. They just drew in the bodies down beneath. I don't know if there was the real one just wasn't good enough, or if they only had the head so they drew a body down below. The one on the right certainly looks like it might have been based on an original photo. There's something weird about that one too. Still looks kind of pasted together. And the head looks off based on the other one. But they also happen to meet Reverend Herman C.S. Haas, who was the pastor of the Lutheran Church over in Wheeling and was very suspicious of this Jacob Huff character. He noticed that he seemed to change his story about where he came from now and then. Then Carolyn got sick, and a few months after the wedding, she died. Now, Haas got the word overnight that she had died, went over and found that the body was lying alone in the bed, and Jacob Huff was over getting his hair trimmed. When he went into the barber shop, as soon as Huff saw him, he started breaking down and crying, then went back and started kissing his wife's dead body. And he said, "I began at that moment to bitterly hate the man." His whole parody of grief seemed to be a mockery. But then, with Carolyn's brand new will in hand, Jacob Huff went around withdrawing all of her savings, cashing in insurance policies, and people like Haas started to get suspicious. There were rumors that Carolyn's grave had been disturbed over in a place called Redmen's Cemetery. Then one day, over on the banks of the Ohio, Jacob Huff's clothing was found and his old pocket watch. So the idea was that it was supposed to look like he had been so distraught over grief of his wife's death that he stripped naked and jumped in the river to drown. Sometimes one takes a great notion to do such a thing. But here's the newspaper headline shortly thereafter. Now, this is all happening in 1895, not like 10 years later after Hoch became a media sensation. But very quickly, they figured out from the pocket watch his real name was Jacob Schmidt. Reverend Haas wrote to Horweiler, Germany, and was able to get a picture of him, confirming that this was the same guy. Now, there was a woman, a couple of pictures of his wife that he left back in Germany, but nothing that we know of for sure. Earliest wife that we can really confirm, or have a picture of anyway, is Carolyn Hoch. Now, she had previously been married to a guy named Johann Adolf Hoch, and when Hoch took off from this place, having faked his death, he just took that name. Over and over, he would take the names of his wife's previous husbands. Now, we moved to Chicago. He arrived in Chicago July of 1895, right as the H.H. Holmes murder castle investigation was heating up. It's all anybody would have talked about. Over here in his bar that he opened right around Milwaukee and Western Avenues. Now, he started talking to people saying he was looking for someone to marry, and somebody recommended, hey, why don't you marry this widow who lives up on Belmont? She's a relative of mine, and she's got like $7,000 worth of cash and property. So she lived over on Belmont. Hoch went to meet her, and very soon thereafter, the two were wed. Her name was Maria Julia Steinbrecher. Now, finding good data about her is tricky because like a lot of people in this story, she changes her name several times. So most of the time she went by Julia Steinbrecher at the time, but she went to her grave as Maria Hoch. They lived right around on here on Belmont, conveniently located right next to the Krause funeral home. Because shortly after the wedding, Carolyn began to get sick and even started telling people, this man is not what he seems. I believe I am being poisoned by my husband. And most people said, oh, she's just delirious. Now, when she died, there was a person who supposedly tried to stop the procession of the funeral to Graceland Cemetery. But Hoch showed a death certificate signed by one Dr. Grimm that said she had died of diabetes. I'm trying to say that like Wilford Brimley as much as possible. So she was buried up here in this unmarked grave at Graceland Cemetery. Now, we've got on the Tomb Snoopers Patreon shortly, we're going to have like her burial receipt and everything. Well, this episode 3 of Tomb Snoopers is going to be all about a woman who lived over here, up in the general Lakeview neighborhood, thereabouts. Lakeview, Lincoln Park. A woman by the name of Minnie Rankin. Now, he met her through a matrimonial ad. There were a lot of matrimonial agencies in the city at the time, over 100 of them. These were places that would basically, they were matchmaking agencies. Many of them were not entirely on the level. Many of the people who patronized them were not entirely on the level. I have said many times that in any given transaction with a matrimonial agency, there's 3 parties. There's the agency, there's the wife, and there's the husband. Of those 3, at least one was usually on the take, or up to some kind of no good. When Hoch married Minnie Warnicki, or Minnie Rankin, she has so many names, it seems that she was trying to swindle him. This was a case where I believe all 3 parties were actually up to no good. The marriage between the 2 of them only seems to have lasted a couple of days. She was already married to another guy who would accuse her of murder the next year, probably married to a couple of other guys as well at the same time. In any case, at some point along the line, game recognized game, and they went out. Now, there was some suggestion, even at the time, wasn't Belle Gunness placing matrimonial ads in papers at the same time, luring people out to her Indiana farm to kill them and take all of their money? What if these 2 had responded to each other's ad? It's tempting to imagine there would be this whole comedy of errors where they're each trying to poison each other, but more likely, I think, game would recognize game, and they'd figure out what was up pretty early on. Now, one story that just wouldn't die at the time, later on, was when Hoch eventually came back to Chicago, he was living right across the street from the Disco Salad Bar, as mentioned. So, the Disco Salad Bar was right around the bend from what is now the 63rd Street Post Office, the site of the old H.H. Holmes murder castle. It stood right over here, so close by. Hoch even told one of his wives that he owned the place. So we're skipping over at this point an awful lot of different wives that he had in between Mary Rankin. We only have time for so many of them in this thing. Maybe one day I'll do like a wives this particular tour. But over here, H.H. Holmes operated a building that was retail on the first floor, apartments on the second. He added a third that was supposed to be hotel space in 1892. This came to be known as the Murder Castle. According to legend, it was rigged up with everything you could possibly need to kill a person. And when Hoch first made the news, a lot of people noticed just how close by he lived at this place. And then he mentioned to one of his wives that he owned this particular building, and a lot of people believe that maybe he was an old apprentice of H.H. Holmes. Now, there's no data that really puts him reliably in the United States before 1895, but a lot of witnesses came forth and said, yes, I was around the castle a lot, and I recognize that man, including M.G. Chappell, the skeleton articulator who claimed he used to buy dead bodies from H.H. Holmes to turn into articulated skeletons. Now, some people said that even said that Johann Hoch might have been the missing person that people used to talk about that Holmes claimed had really committed all of the murders. Then they suggested he might have been the twin brother of a guy by the name of Louis Toombs, who's been covered on the Patreon Adam Chicago lately. So other people would later suggest that one of his victims was Justina Leffler, who was generally thought to have been a victim of Bel Gunnis. In any case, even if Special Shippey eventually decided, no, this is all nuts. We've got a lot of witnesses saying he was there, but none of them are describing the same guy. But stories about him got weirder and weirder. He did a brief stint in prison after marrying Mary Rankin and marrying several other women. When he got out, he eventually came up here to Chicago again and married a woman by the name of Mary Elizabeth Girk, who lived in this house on Eugenie Street that is still standing today. It's been redone. It's got siding on it now. It's a brick underneath it. But this is Liz Gerke. He met her while living at the boarding house. Proposed very quickly. She asked her brother, do you think I ought to marry this guy? And he said, you're old enough to decide that for yourself. So she decided to marry him. Now, Liz was very into New Age stuff. She was into things like spiritualism. She saw an ad that you could send away for a course to be a hypnotist. And eventually, when the cops found her, she still had a trunk, including things like his hypnotism guidebook that he had picked up. Now, this hypnotism guidebook, I've read the whole thing. It's been posted on our Patreon before, the one right here. It would be a very good guide for how to do a good comedy hypnosis show, only it leaves out the part where you're supposed to say, play along under your breath. But Hoch went all the way through it and even got a diploma from the College of Hypnotism. Now, you can imagine, this is like a live look at the newsrooms when they found out this guy had a connection to hypnosis. They loved talking about hypnosis in newspapers at the time. In fact, they even started going around that Hoch had in fact been using a zither to hypnotize people. Reverend Haas said he was a great zither player. And this was actually very comforting to a lot of the women that he had married. These were people who had met him and married him right away and then been swindled. It did them a lot of good to be able to say, oh, I was hypnotized. That's it. I didn't make a terrible decision myself. He has supernatural powers. That's all. So this started going around. This is when they were up to 26 wives, many of whom would eventually be debunked. And this is something that his landlady in New York said. He would take her by the wrists and look deeply into her eyes. Eventually, he just deserted Elizabeth Girk. She wouldn't give him all of her money. And when she got sick, she said, no, I'll just go to the doctor instead. You don't have to give me any medicine. Eventually, he said, I'm going to hypnotize you. And she said, watch out, Schmidt, I'll hypnotize you. So he disappeared and moved down to the neighborhood of Pullman. This was a cool thing to find out. This is something that's only due to the diligence of the Chicago American that we have the address where he lived in here. But right behind my old car in this picture is the house where Johann Hoch was boarding when he lived in Pullman in early 1904. There's a picture of it as taken by Kristen. But while he was living here, he started corresponding by mail with Anna Hendrickson, who saw this newspaper ad in a matrimonial section and thought, oh, look at this old fool. I'll just tease him a little bit. She thought she was going to catfish the guy, but ended up falling in love with him. Her own husband had died under mysterious circumstances, freezing to death while out on a job a few years before. And so the two of them were wed under his proper name, John Jacob Schmidt, only lacking the Jingleheimer. And of course, in between this, there were many others. He had married Martha Herfeld, Mary Becker, who had died, possibly Sophia Finca, but probably not. The number of wives known, you can see it climbing up to here at 44. At one point, they believed that he had murdered 16 people. More proper number of that is probably about 5. But when he married Anna, she said he was just the most model husband, absolutely the perfect husband. He broke up her washtub saying, I am not marrying you to have a servant, I am marrying you to have a companion. They would go to music halls together and sing Goodbye Dolly Gray. Then one day he told her, listen, I know I told you that wish you had no money so nobody would think I was marrying you for the money. I have to take that back now. I just got word that my father has died in Germany. I need to go to Germany to claim the inheritance. Can you go to your bank and get us the money? So she did. And then he went out to get the tickets and disappeared. So from there he bopped around to Baltimore and Philadelphia for a little while. But after that, he married Maria Walker and then her sister, disappeared, and ended up at the boarding house of Catherine Kummerl, having run away from Amelia Fisher, having just murdered her sister. He ended up here on 47th Street in Manhattan, taking this just over to where the boarding house would have been, run by a woman named Catherine Kummerl. This is how she looked in much younger days. But he moved in here and started eating potatoes. That's one thing that she really remembered about him, was she never saw a man eat more potatoes. He would say, I could eat about 1.5 bushels of these, and then actually act like he was going to do it. But meanwhile, he started telling her, you should marry me. Look, I can help peel potatoes. So already he proposed to somebody else. She said, I've been married to 3 different guys. I can get another husband if I want, but I'm done with men. It makes me sick to have a man make love to me. In the 21st century, we can make of this what we will. But eventually, she saw the newspaper item saying that there was this awful man in Chicago, saw the picture and thought, oh no, this is the guy. So she ran off to the 47th Street police station. They walked over and talked to him for a little bit, eventually said, hello, Hoch. And he said, oh, hello. My name's not Hoch, I mean. He was very easy to trip up in his various lies. So he was captured, and it turned out that among his stuff had been a fountain pen that was stuffed with arsenic. And he tried to say, oh no, that's not arsenic, it's just toothache powder. To which they reasonably replied, why are you keeping your toothache powder hidden in a pen? Back in Chicago, Liz Gerke and Anna Hendricks and Emily Fisher all met and chatted and saying things like, well, I never thought it would come to this. Here's Liz Gerke when she was younger. Now, sometimes the woman on the left, who is Liz Gerke, is identified as Minnie Rankin when people look at this picture, but no, that's Liz Gerke. Minnie wasn't there that day. She was still saying, oh, okay, I knew Hoch, but I didn't marry him. I was already married to somebody else. I couldn't have married him. Eventually, she broke down and admitted it. But after the inquest, Anna Hendricks was brought by Evelyn Campbell out to New York to identify Johann Hoch, identified him in the cell, and having been arrested, they had brought him to a cell in Mulberry Street, right across from the Puck building over there, where Puck magazine was published. It may be that what he was across from this humor magazine that he decided to craft a new persona for himself that would just be a comedian. Now, none of his wives talked about him having a marvelous sense of humor or being a total goofball, but every reporter who met him after this said he was like a German language dialect comedian. We'll walk inside. It's now a parking garage where Mulberry Street used to be. But they held him here as he crafted a new persona for himself. And every day, they would have to walk him from this place out to the Jefferson Market Police Court, take a hike through Greenwich Village. They'd pass Taylor Swift's place on Cornelia Street. They'd pass the side of the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan album cover. Eventually ending up about a mile away or so at the old Jefferson Market Police Court. He was actually here when they announced that arsenic had in fact been found in the grave of Marie Walker. Initially they said that there wasn't, then all of a sudden they said that there was lots and lots of arsenic in her stomach. Frankly, more than there really should have been. But he was brought back here to the Jefferson Market Police Court, which is now a library regularly. Evelyn Campbell would interview him as he walked along. Then he was given this train ride all the way back to Chicago, surrounded by reporters, both Frances Mall of the New York American and Evelyn Campbell of the Chicago American. Now, Frances was a little bit better at interviewing Hoch than Evelyn was. Evelyn was still pretty new to this kind of thing. But he ended up being taken here to the courthouse in Chicago, the courthouse and jail. Where he was brought to another inquest of his own and then put in what they called the sweat box. There were so many reporters around they couldn't really do some of the tricks they would normally do in a sweat box. But Minnie came in to identify him and he said, "Oh, be careful, you're a Bluebeard too, you know." Liz Gerke came in and said, "Well, he's looking better than he did back then, but yep, that's him." Emily Fisher came in saying, "You dog, you stole my money. You dog, you cur." He calmed her down and said, No, I didn't steal your money. I was going to give it back," which she seemed to believe. But he ended up in here with Jailer Whitman, a very kind old soul, and was photographed at the inquest showing his many moods, though mostly he was tired. He'd just been on the train for a really long time. Aroused over there on the right. But here we've got him posed with Inspector Schiffy, Michael Loftus, the detective who took him back, and Coroner Hoffman. I don't have any dirt on Michael Loftus, but Schiffy and Hoffman were so corrupt and inept that I think everybody who was ever sentenced to be executed under them should have at least been given a commuted sentence. You just can't really trust anything that came up with these guys. I honestly believe that they tried to frame Johann Hoch. Not to say he wasn't guilty, but they tried to frame him anyway. But he was given a real cushy treatment in jail at first. They was trying to coddle him to get him to confess. One day he even walked over to the Bush Temple of Music to get a haircut and a shave, after which he posed for that picture that was back at the beginning. While he was here, people would send him valentines. Everywhere he went, being John Jacob Schmidt, wherever he went out, the people would always shout. And at the time, he would sit around and talk about how he managed to do this. He always claimed at the time, "No, I don't really play the zither at all, despite all the people who say that I did." He would just say, "Really, you just have to flatter people. That's the number one thing. Women can be won by flattery more than any other way." And newspapers were just kind of astounded by this. They would write down all the different ways that he posed, all the different lies that he told, all the different tricks that he did. And these ones is an interesting case here that all of these are actual wives of his. At the time, they were still writing a lot of different things. I like that Carolyn Hoch, just use all the different names that she used. None of these people spelled their name the same way twice. This is Emily, his last wife here in Chicago, who ended up testifying against him, but then shortly after the trial, took it all back, said, "No, I didn't mean any of the stuff that I said on the trial. They made me live with the German-speaking police officer, and I had to meet with Inspector Schiffy and the lawyer Harry Olson in their office all the time. They wouldn't let me talk to my husband. They kept telling me what I had to say, and they kept on saying that if I didn't say all of these things, they'd say I was the murderer." Now, I think we could make a compelling case that she must have had at least been complicit in her sister's murder. She and her sister had never gotten along very well. The lawyer thought that was the case. It didn't really come up too much in the trial, partly because she played along. Later on, she would marry again and hold up a rope to scare her new husband, saying, "This is the rope they used to hang my old husband, and I'm going to use it on you." He also claimed that he once beat her with a roast duck. This tells us something about her conduct, but it's difficult to say exactly what. But she was the star witness at the trial. Hoch was very quickly convicted and sentenced to be hanged. This led to quite a thing, for it was almost a year after the trial he was able to push through on more than one occasion, he was brought to the death cell to spend one last night before his execution, but was given a reprieve at the last second. Had to trim a lot of this out of the book because it was just such a long saga. But this is the death cell where prisoners would be taken to spend their last night, usually like playing cards and smoking cigars. Here he is praying with Jailer Whitman. And here is a mock-up of the procession to the gallows as it finally happened in February of 1906. Now, Hoch by this time had a new lawyer, who somehow nobody had noticed was the boyfriend of a reporter who was trying to get him off the hook as well. So even as he was being marched to the gallows, his lawyer and Edward Maher, an old lawyer of H.H. Holmes, were running around trying to find a judge who would stop the execution. Eventually they went in to talk to Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was a fairly new judge at the time but known for being unpredictable. They begged him to say, look, we've got a problem with the paperwork, we need you to sign this off and delay things. He said, I don't know about that. And they said, no, you've got to do it now. He said, well, I'll look it over, I'll give you my decision after lunch. And they said, he's going to be hanged by after lunch, it's too late. He said, hey, I've spoken. Then disappeared. Eventually he came back with the paperwork in hand. But by the time that he was saying that he might do it, Hoch was already dressed for the gallows. He was still saying, I will not hang. These are all from the day before. Hoch praying as the jailer sets the gallows. They were running around talking to people like Landis. But then finally, this paper had been printed for a long time. As the things got delayed by half an hour or so at a time, they had to just kind of sit on this, hoping that they didn't have what would later be known as like a Dewey defeats Truman situation. And then finally, breaking out the absolute largest font they could muster, Hoch hanged. His last wife in Philadelphia said that she had a premonition, a flash of blue light that told her that he was dead. He was not quite dead when she got that vision, based on what time she said it was. Well, we'll move on to a couple of whatever happened to. Short version is, they all died, eventually. This is Johann Hoch's graveyard, Elmwood Cemetery. He's a little bit further over. Now, one interesting thing is his grave is unmarked and can't really be pinpointed anymore. It was a term grave, and after 30 years, the area was redeveloped because nobody was going to pay to have him moved anywhere. Nobody was really left to do so. But it is kind of near the chapel in this place, just a little beyond the picture, right next to a grave for Schmidt, which is his real last name, and a gravestone for Elizabeth Weber, which is his mother's real name. What does this mean? Nothing. Elizabeth Weber is also the name of Billy Joel's first wife. But poetically, it's one of those things that starts to seem like it means something the further you go. Shippey himself, Inspector Shippey's house is still standing. By the time of the Hoch case, he was probably already suffering the effects of syphilis, which was ravaging his brain. A couple of years later, a young man named Lazarus Averbuck knocked on the door in the middle of the night with a blank piece of paper. Apparently, he thought he needed a letter from the chief of police to move someplace else, as was the custom in the old country. All Shippey saw was, hey, that guy looks Jewish, he must be an anarchist, so he killed him. Now, only Coroner Hoffman was allowed to ask any questions at the coroner's inquest, so he was able to get him off on self-defense, but he never spent another day in uniform. After 1908, he was in an asylum for a while, got out, died. And that about wraps us up, in fact. So this is all covered in more detail over here in Chicago's Serial Husband, The Marriages and Murders of Johann Hoch. I will once again paste that Amazon link. I'm sure you can find it at your local indie store as well, but once again, I get more money for the Amazon link. So you can also just click this to buy yourself a washer dryer or something. It's all one to me. Also, we are covering it on the brand new podcast, Tomb Snoopers, which goes into more detail than the book. They gave me a really tight word count limit on the book. I would have liked to go into much more detail, but I know that Johann Hoch is not yet famous enough that I can do a book as big and thick as the H.H. Holmes book. Incidentally, over on this Patreon, we still do stuff like serial killers stuff on every Friday on the serial killer tier. I'm going to be getting some stuff in Boston on Monday. I got a day in Boston. I just made arrangements to go hang out in the microfilm room, getting stuff for when H.H. Holmes was arrested in Boston. Quite a few Boston papers covered this, but a lot of them haven't been digitized, so I'm going to go check that out while I am in town. Also, check out Tomb Snoopers wherever your favorite podcasts are. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. Thanks a lot. These are all a little bit out of date now. So, scroll all the way back, see if I can find where that is even up. Put this up, and upcoming tours. All right, we'll put the Benny Goodman back on. We'll just hang out like we always do. Thanks for those of you who are still hitting these donate buttons. It does keep me going. I'm not lifting anything else tonight. I suppose I can take off the golfer's elbow brace. I don't see the cats, and that's cause for concern. Where are you guys? There's Miles in the hall. Not being able to see Ember is a little bit more of a trouble. It's very much like having a toddler here, having Ember living with me. Curse of the Zither. I wanted to call the book Hoch Tales. Hoch Tales. Woo. Here on Tomb Snoopers, we might solve a mystery or rewrite history. Every day we're out here making Hoch Tales. She's down here chasing a mouse. Toy mouse. There's Gene. See you tomorrow for Find a Grave Friday. Oh, yeah, I always gotta clean the paws. Yeah. I got them switched to a pine pellet litter, hoping that they'll track less. Because they do tend to track. Thank you, Marita. Amber. Wanna hop up and say hi? Baby. Oh yes, and she's naughty. But you expect a kitten to be a little bit naughty. You can't not expect a kitten to be naughty now, can you? No. Have a good bounce, Susan. It's very much like having a toddler in the house. She's always getting into stuff, getting up to stuff. Oh, thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Georgia. Yep, she's our little cat. She and Miles were chasing each other a lot today. They get along very well. Miles is a very good big brother. What were you like as a toddler? The way I remember it, I was perfect. I could already do algebra. I was a chess prodigy. I could play the piano like nobody's business. I don't know what happened. I can't do any of that stuff now. I've had a couple of cats who were eternal kittens. Ember's a good girl.
Down Harlem Way, they're all trucking. And here's Helen Ward to tell you all about it. Trucking.
You want to chase it? Thank you, buddy. Today I was posting all of the supplemental material for episode 3 of Tomb Snoopers. It's a lot. Getting everything kind of pre-posted because I got, busy stuff coming up. Started to rockin'.
As soon as the news got round, the folks downtown came up in Harlem. Everybody's truckin'.
Remember, you want them all to see you? All over town.
You see them shuffling, trucking along. It spread like a forest blaze, became a craze and
Yep, solved algebra with an abacus. That's it. Sure I did. I believe we had an abacus when I was a kid. What it was for, how to use it, I don't know. I just kind of moved stuff around. Just, stimming. I will see you tomorrow, Cindy. Critter keeper over there. 4 pounds when you spayed her. Yeah, that seems like you would have to go on a diet.
Benny Goodman presents On the Alamo.
Critter keeper, you new around here? Ah, thanks. This was a gift. So was the SoCo I just drank out of it. From the same person. Where is Miles? Miles is right here. I think they're about getting ready to play another round of Horse Stampede. I think it's their favorite game. Yeah, Ember is over here getting ready to pounce. I'm pretty sure. Thanks, Rihanna. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. All right. I see a lot of people's names on here, and I hope I'm pronouncing them correctly, but it's hard to know for sure. Same thing with this whole story. I have no idea how most of these people pronounce their last names. Like Minnie Wernicke/Rankin. It's amazing how many ways they found to spell the name Rankin. Hey, Jerry. Hope you're well. You've been out of the loop. Make sure that you are checking out, for one thing, the new book, Chicago's Serial Husband, The Marriages and Murders of Johann Hoch. And Tomb Snoopers, the new podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Pretty much anywhere. Like, subscribe, review, tell your friends. I haven't started really pushing advertisement for it yet. It's really got the one episode. After episode 3, I'll start pushing a little bit more. It's also going to be about that time that we get into the busy season. Also been working on setting up my guest room. My parents will be here in just a few weeks.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we stay right in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago and dance some more to
Thank you,
Benny
Jerry.
Goodman and his orchestra, and hear Helen Ward sing Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo.
Johann Hoch wife timeline. I am gonna put one of those up soon, Octavio. Now I do have a timeline in the timeline program, but it's huge and horribly complicated.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a double by the toe. If it hollers, let it go, let it fly away. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it's the saying high and low. Hear it everywhere you go,
Any time of day.
Big Ben rings it, Valley sings it, Wiseman swings it,
Even Mr. Crosby sings it.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch the trouble by the toe.
Oh, the new family member's name. This little girl is Ember. Bill.
Let it fly away.
Will Win Strachey be in the Graceland book? Yes, Win Strachey will be in the new Graceland book. That is the plan. That'll be my winter project, really.
And we'll let the title speak for itself. Benny Goodman presenting Madhouse.
Pringles cans all around. All right. Yeah, Marita, Find a Great Friday be in the same region they always are. Same vicinity, I'll let you guys know ahead of time. It's going to be Mount Olivet, I'll just say it. But So the way that German names work in these days, I gotta kind of cover this. The way in Hoch's era, boys were almost always named Johann and then a roof name. Like Johann Sebastian Bach probably went by Sebastian because all his brothers were also named Johann. Girls, their first name was usually Anna or Marie. Once they got to the States, people usually kind of switched between both their first and second names and the German version and the Americanized version of them pretty much interchangeably. So practically everyone in this story went by Mary half the time. It makes things awfully confusing. I had to kind of like make a graph. Like Elizabeth Gerke usually went by Mary, but we're gonna call her Liz in the book. We'll call Maria Julia Hoch Julia Steinbrecher. We'll call Maria Julia Des Maria Julia. Jerry, the new book is out officially September 23rd, but really it's kind of out now. It's out whenever it comes in from the printers. I've got a couple of cases of it. So you can get it at the upcoming Rose Hill Cemetery tour on the 14th.
Michigan Avenue in Chicago. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
All right, that's Benny wrapping it up. Means it's time for me to wrap it up as well. So don't forget, check out this new book. You can pre-order it now. Link is up there. And, of course, check out Tomb Snoopers, the brand new podcast. Join the Patreon. You'll get early access to the second episode and all the episodes coming up after that. Those will come up on Sunday for subscribers and Monday for everybody else, along with huge supplemental posts. Lots of great stuff coming up. Tomorrow I'll see you for Find a Grave Friday, 10 o'clock Chicago time. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling you all to stay safe, stay strong. Get registered for MystericOn now. We're only a few weeks out. And I'll see you tomorrow. For me and the cats, stay